Hello, my fellow enthusiasts. I'm just giving you another review on another great coaster known as Steel Visions at Cedar Point. This coaster was designed and built by Rocky Mountain Construction in 2018. It was the former Main Street that was built in 1990. This is my second RMC I ever rode. My first was Texas Giant in 2017. When I rode Texas Giant, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a great job for them to have for that to be their first RMC. I thought they did a great job with it. Um, Going into Steel Vengeance, I really didn't know what to expect because I had never been exposed to a lot of those elements. I didn't really have any expectations. By this time, I was in college. It was my last year of college. I didn't really travel a lot. I was only lucky enough to be able to go to Texas because my mother had moved to Dallas, and during my college breaks, I would go visit her a lot. And so, over Texas just kind of fell in my lap there. Um, the one thing that really made me realize that this was going to be a pretty serious coaster is as I remember seeing Taylor from Coaster Studios' reaction. To me, he seems like a pretty even keel dude, and I had never seen him react like that. And when I saw that video, I kind of knew that this is a pretty serious ride. And boy, was I right. This Steel Vengeance completely overwhelmed me, and it's hard to kind of articulate how crazy it was to me because, like I said, I had not experienced a lot of these elements on an RMC because Texas Giant was so different. So, I didn't understand what was even happening to my body. At a certain point, like stuff was just happening faster than I could even react to it. And it has a 200-foot 90-degree drop, and you would think that's a pretty awesome moment, but it's literally just the beginning. And this is one of those coasters where every single moment is amazing. There is no dead space. um, they made a concerted effort to make this the best coaster possible, and I couldn't be happier with it. The sequence of elements like the top hat or this second hill, you're out of your seat that entire hill, and then you just slam into the ground, and then before you even have time to process it, you go through this massive wave turn. And that wave turn was kind of the moment that I was questioning what's even happening anymore because I had never experienced sideways airtime. So I just remember hanging out of my seat while I'm on my side, and I was just thinking, what in the world is this? And before you know it, I'm going through the zero Z roll. It's the two zero Z rolls, and in between each element is just nothing but a bunch of quick ejector heels. So it is so one moment just comes one right after another. And it just got to the point where I just started laughing. Like, this is the only time I've ever just started laughing on a coaster because I just didn't understand what was happening. And then the second half is just as good as the first half because you go inside the structure. So it's like two coasters in one. You're these massive elements, and then the second half, you're diving underneath the structure. And it's just such a crazy, experience. You just, the ride just never ends. And each one of those little bunny hills hit. They hit, and it feels like it's trying to throw you off the train. Like, I would describe Sylvensis is like a mechanical bull. It's literally a coaster that feels like a mechanical bull that's trying to throw you off the ride, and it just keeps going and going and going, and I just I'm still speechless on how good it was. I think the one problem with it are those trains. Those trains are not comfortable to me. It did get to the point where it really started to hurt my thighs because I'm a taller guy. And like there was even a moment where I felt like my hip was gonna get dislocated on it. But the ride is so good, I was able to deal with the pain. For me, it's a back row ride. For me, I could not. I did it in the front row one time, and I couldn't. I can't ever do that again because it's way more painful in the front row. In the front row, it was to the point where it was unrideable for me. Um, I wish that those trains were the same as the ones on Texas Giant and Iron Rattler. I just think those are way more comfortable. But unfortunately, when the accident happened with Texas Giant, they had to make some changes. But for a long time, Millennium Force was the best coaster I'd ever ridden, growing up. And Steel Vengeance was the first coaster I ever rode that I thought was better than Millennium Force. Um, and like I said, I just can't say enough of it. It's even though I've gone on the rides like Iron Gwazi, Wildcats Revenge, Twisted Colossus out in Magic Mountain, and then I went 7 years without riding it. My first rides were in 2018, and then I finally rode it again in 2025. And even after all those rides on those newer RMCs, I still think it's the best one. It's a perfect layout. Anytime I hear somebody calling it overrated and calling it overrated, I just laugh because it's like enthusiasts say they wanted ejector airtime. They like ejector airtime. So what does Cedar Point and RMC do? They do everything they possibly can to give you as much ejector airtime as possible. And you know, when I rode it in 2018, it wasn't slowing down on the mid course at all. This was right before the incident where they made you put everything in the locker, and I can't remember. I think it was only running 2 trains back then, so it was just flying through. And even in 2025, it was running all 3 trains, and it was stopping. It didn't really make that much of a difference, it wasn't as crazy as it was, my first time in 2018 because I kind of knew what to expect, and then like I said, I had been on so many of the other RMCs that I had kind of gotten used to it, but it's still the best, RMC I've ever ridden. I know a lot of people like to go back and forth between Steel Vengeance and Iron Gwazi. I'm a Vengeance guy, and it's not really close for me. Um, I think saying Iron Gwazi is better than Steel Vengeance is like saying Orion is better than Fury. To me, it just doesn't make any sense because I feel like Steel Vengeance does everything Iron Gwazi does, but has extra heels on top of it. And don't get me wrong, Iron Gwazi is a phenomenal coaster, absolutely phenomenal. It is worth a trip to Florida by itself. You know, I really, that debate is kind of annoying to me. Honestly, it's almost like politics. Like it doesn't really matter because when I'm riding one of them, I'm not really thinking about which one is better. They're both good enough to book a hotel by themselves for. So that's good enough for me. Um, I think that this is the best coaster at Cedar Point still, with Top Thrill 2, right below it. Um, my home park is Kings Island. I would love to have an RMC. I think that would be the perfect addition to Kings Island because it fits their history. It doesn't have to be anything crazy like Steel Vengeance. I would be happy with something like Air Force One or Wildcats Revenge. Um, but like I said, Steel Vengeance is as good as a coaster as it gets, and I thought nothing could possibly beat that ride after riding it. But I know this is an unpopular opinion. I think that Fury, and I have a review video on that. Fury did beat it, slightly beat it. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think that Fury Steel Vengeance and I-305 are kind of my top three, and there's not really anything close to those three. I think that those three coasters for me are kind of in their own class by themselves. The only thing in my life that I've experienced that can beat those three coasters is skydiving. Skydiving blows any coaster out of the water. Um, Unfortunately, I never took videos of my jumps because I didn't want to pay for it. But like I said, Cedar Point hit the mark with this. You know, when I knew they were going to RMC it, Main Street. You know, I never would have thought that they would go 200 feet and do all this, because they really didn't need to, and it still would have been a great ride. But with Steel Vengeance, you can tell Cedar Point told Alan Shilkey and RMC, I want you to build the best coaster in the world and do whatever you got to do it. And you know, they did. You know, they hit the mark. And you know, I got to ride it at night for the first time, you know, in 2025. You know, that was pretty spectacular. You know, I didn't get as many rides as I wanted to on it because, you know, it's so far back in Frontier Town. And Cedar Point has so many really good rides. You know, most of these parks, you only got one superstar coaster you travel for, while Cedar Point has three. I think Millennium Force and Top Thrill 2 are still, you know, the top three. I know many people like Maverick, you know, think Maverick's great, but I find Maverick a little bit overrated, honestly. But still a great ride. Other than Magic Mountain, I think Cedar Point has the deepest lineup in the country. Just so many good rides, you know, so much depth, so much quality. You know, I feel like my last trip I stayed there for 6 days because I just wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure I got to ride Top Thrill 2, and I just wanted to finally soak in. When I was a kid, I only spent 2 days, and I never felt like it was enough. So this time, you know, I wanted to soak in as much as possible, and that was really a great experience. I don't know when I'll be back to Cedar Point because, you know, it's so expensive to stay there. You know, and I'm not an enthusiast. I know a lot of enthusiasts like to be as cheap as possible with hotels. I'm not. I gotta stay somewhere decent. But you know, I don't know when I'll be back. Hopefully in the next couple years. I like traveling across the country now. You know, when I was growing up, I went to Cedar Point all the time, and it's been nice to go out and then come back. When I came back in 2025, it almost felt like I was coming back home. It was just such a great experience to go down that causeway and see such a childhood golden moment. But anyway, thanks for listening to my video, and subscribe if you would like more.